Get me that signal. We need more power.
Quiet down. I am Admiral Talon, and I'd like to welcome you to the bridge crew of the Imperial Navy's oldest Victory-class Star Destroyer, the Resolute. The reason you've been assigned here is because you are the rawest recruits in the galaxy, and it is my task to turn you into seasoned professionals. The ship you are now on has seen combat in systems throughout the quadrant, and is now being held together only by the grace of the Emperor himself. You will find life difficult here. You are expected to obey orders instantly, without question, and I do not want my ship to end up as so much space debris. Look around you. Half of your fellow recruits will not survive the training process. Discipline is harsh, and those who cannot perform up to Imperial standards will find themselves sent home via an open airlock. You each had your own reasons for joining the Imperial Navy. I do not care what those reasons are. The only reason to live now is to serve the Empire. The best of you will advance, and the worst of you will not. And do not think that it is predetermined that some of you will live. You would not be the first class that I placed in front of a firing squad because of incompetence. A Star Destroyer is not a TIE fighter. This is a huge community of loyal Imperial Navy personnel, and it takes time and skill to navigate a ship this size. I have to be 2 steps ahead of every other ship in a battle, and if any of you hesitate in executing their duties, the entire ship would be lost. Your training will begin immediately. Are there any questions?
Sir, is it true that the Resolute was defeated in battle by a Carillion corvette and a Nebulan B frigate at the Battle of Corpus 4 during the Clone Wars?
Are there any other questions?
Sir, is it true that the Emperor is in actuality a mouse?
No, it isn't. Are there any other questions?
Sir, can I have Steve's bunk? I don't think he'll be using it anymore.
Let me think. No. All right, question and answer time is over before I have to shoot all of you idiots. Training will begin now. Proceed to your assigned stations, and I will provide everyone with a brief overview of the big picture in space combat before you begin work with the officers assigned to you. And clean that up.
Let's take a little closer look at the core set for Star Wars Armada. Of course, we're going to take a look at the models that come with it. This is the Victory-class Star Destroyer for the Empire. This is the only Empire ship that comes with the game. Here we have the Nebulan B frigate for the Rebels, and the CR-90 Corvette A for the Rebels. And those are the 2 ships for the Rebel side. And you also get squadrons of TIE fighters and X-Wings. Here's one of the TIE fighter squadrons. And as you can see, this is how you keep track of how much health they still have. Start at 3, and as you take damage, you move down to 2, 1, and boom. And then they're gone. For the X-Wings, there's the X-Wings. Yes, they're tiny. And they actually start with 5. There's these little cool dials, so that when you activate one of these ships, so that you know you've used them that turn, you move this to the other side. Once all of them have been moved to the other side, well, you know you're done moving your squadrons. This is my little Starfield board that I have set up. It's 3 foot by 3 foot. For 2 core sets and for a full 300-point game, which you would need 2 core sets for, you would probably need a 3 foot by 6 foot area in order to play. With this 3 foot by 3 foot area, you get in combat really fast, and it's easy to accidentally move off of the board, and if you do, well, your ship goes boom. Because in this game they use this nifty maneuver tool now, and this is for the ships. And on the cards, what it shows you, this is your card, here is a Victory 2 class Star Destroyer card. You also get the Victory 1 class. The main difference is the points that they cost. This one costs 85 points, and the Victory 1 only costs 73. And so you're building a 300-point fleet. Well, it's your choice whether you want to use the Victory 1 or the Victory 2 card. There's other little differences on the cards as well. Here is your hull points. Once you take that much damage, you go boom. This is the die you use when attacking a squadron. This is the dice that you use when attacking out of these areas on your from your ship. So this is the front hull, left, right, and rear. So in the front you would get 3 red dice, 3 blue dice. And there's red, blue, and black dice. They have slight differences on them. Blue is more for accuracy. Black does the most painful damage because it has the critical and hit combo on it. Over here, these are the defense tokens that you get to use. So, also down here, this is your speed and how you can use the maneuver tool. As you can see, the Victory 2 class Star Destroyer only goes up to speed 2. And in relation to this maneuver tool, at speed 1, you can move ahead 1 and you can click 1 click at the first junction. So right here, I can go click that way or click that way. And then I would move my ship along that axis, like so. Starts at 0. I move him up there, and then he's moved. At speed 2, he goes ahead 1, and then on the second one you can do a click. So he is going to actually be going up to 2 for this one. So at my second one I can do a click left or click right. So let's say we do a click left again. Bring it back over here, and this is how he would move 2 and turn. Now, if you end up knocking any of the squadrons out of the way, your opponent gets to replace them wherever he wants, as long as they're touching the base of your ship, as so. This, of course, the Star Destroyers don't have a lot of maneuverability either. The Rebel ships are much faster, and they have greater maneuverability. However, of course, they have less firepower and less shields. On each of these bases, you can see that there is a shield on each side. And the Star Destroyer starts with 3 on the front, and both sides, and 1 in the rear. Once you take enough damage to reduce that to 0, then you would start taking hull damage. You can't even take a critical hit until your shields are gone. Luckily, you can repair your shields, and you can even repair hull hits by using the engineering value. Now that brings me to the command dials. You probably heard that you have to make all your decisions before the game, multiple turns in a row. And it's true to a certain extent, but it's not as horrifying as it sounds. It's not you're not going to lose the game because you picked the wrong command. The Star Destroyer, you have to plan for 3 turns. So on your first turn, you're going to figure out all 3 of these dials. On each dial, there are 4 commands, and you just rotate to see which one you want to use. There's a little card that tells you what each one does. You have Navigate, you have Squadron, you have Repair, and Concentrate Fire. Now, the Navigate allows you to change your speed by 1 and temporarily increase your yaw value by 1. You can do either or both. It is your choice, and that's if you spend the dial right at the beginning of your turn when you flip it over. So if you flip this over and say, this is what I'm doing, and you can go ahead and do that. You also have these little speed tokens. Of course, the Star Destroyer can only go up to speed 2, so if you're going at 1, you can move it up to 2. If you're moving at 2, you can move it down to 1. Or from 1, you can also go to 0 and not move at all. And you have that in front of you as well. So once you make your decision what you're going to do, let's finish going through those. Navigate lets you change that. Squadron means you can activate a number of squadrons at close or medium range to you equal to your squadron value. And these squadrons can move and attack. Normally, during the squadron phase, when you start moving 2 squadrons at a time, you can either move or attack, but you cannot do both. And squadrons are very short range. This is the distance side of the ruler, and this lets you determine basically how far your squadrons are going to be able to move. The X-Wings can go up to a distance of 3 in any direction, and the TIE Fighters can go up to a distance of 4 in any direction. However, when they shoot, they have to be within a distance of 1 in order to hit, or in order to shoot at all, do any kind of damage. And if they're within distance of 1 of any other squadron, that means they're engaged and they can do nothing, they can't move or anything until they resolve their current battle here. Either one or the other has to be destroyed. Now back to the command dials. So the nice thing about this is if you choose the squadron option, you can move and attack with, let's see, the squadron value on the Victory 2 is 3. So if they're within medium range of you, and the other side of the dial, the ruler is range. This is close range, this is medium, and this is long range. The other thing about this range thing is these are the dice you can use if you're at close range. At medium range you can use only blue or red, and at long range you can only use red dice. So in order to use certain guns you have to be in close range to use the black dice at all. So that's the other consideration. Sure, I may get 3 red and 3 blue dice when I'm attacking from the front, but if I'm at long range, I can't use those blue dice. I can only use the 3 red. See, there's so much involved, and it's so similar to X-Wing and yet so different from X-Wing. And I like this much better, especially the way that the movement template allows you to move like, it's almost like a naval battle, really. Back to the dial. The third option here is repair. So you can use your engineering points you can use 1 point to move a shield to another hull zone, 2 points to recover 1 shield, or 3 points to discard 1 damage card. And luckily the Victory 2 gets 4 engineering points, which is pretty nice. And that's if you spend this right away at the beginning of the turn. The final one is Concentrate Fire. And what that does is let you add 1 attack die of any color that's already in the attack pool. The other option is that, let's say you chose the engineering one, but you don't need it right now because you got nothing to repair. You've taken no damage. So what happens? Does this go to waste? No, you trade in your dial for a token. So then you take the token and you can either place it on the ship base or place it on your card, whichever you want, but now you have this token. And you can save this for use in a later round. At the appropriate time, you can say, well, I'm going to use my engineering token. And they have less effect. So, for example, if navigating, when you use the token, all you can do is change your speed by 1. You can't do the yaw value part. For squadrons, you can activate 1 squadron if you use a token. For repair, you gain engineering points to spend equal to half of your engineering value. So instead of 4, I would get 2. And for Concentrate Fire, all it does is it allows you to re-roll 1 attack die. So it's a less effect, but you're not wasting it. And so that is important. And then each subsequent turn, and there's only 6. This game only lasts 6 rounds. So, and in the first round, you're usually not shooting because you're usually out of range. So from the 2nd to the 6th round, you're battling and maneuvering, and everybody's trying to get behind the Star Destroyer so they can shoot back here at his weak spot, where he has the least amount of firepower as well. But each turn after that, you will take the dial that you used, pick a new command, and then that goes on the bottom of your stack. So that each turn you just grab the top one, and that's the one that takes place. Now it's only the Star Destroyer currently that uses, you have to have all three figured out at the beginning of the game, or plan 3 turns ahead. The Corvette, you only have to do 1. So you could pick a new one each turn, it doesn't matter. And the frigate, you have to do 2. So there's not that much planning ahead that has to happen. And even if you do something that you didn't want to do, well, you know, it's not going to be a horrible effect on you at all. The last thing I want to mention here is the defense tokens. Each ship has defense tokens. And when you're attacked by somebody, during that attack, you can opt to use one of your defense tokens. They come with a green side and a blue side. And you've got 4 different types of defense tokens as well. There's redirect, which allows you to move damage from the hull zone that's getting shot at to another hull zone. And that's if you want to, you know, if your front shields are about to go out, you can move it to the side, that damage to one of the side shields, and maybe then you would survive better. There's evade. And what that does is at long range, it cancels 1 attack die. At medium, you can choose 1 die that needs to be re-rolled, and at close range, it does nothing. And then there's brace. When damage is total, you reduce the total damage to half, rounded up. And scatter, which cancels all attack dice, which is really nice to have. And once you've been shot during a turn, and you use that token, you flip it over to its red side to show that it's been used. And for the rest of that turn, you only have the other 2 of options available to you. And as you take more attacks and you use more defense, they get used up. However, in an emergency, you can use it when it's on its red side. But if you do, the token gets discarded from the game, and you can no longer use that for the rest of the game. Otherwise, at the beginning of your turn, all the tokens that are on the red side get flipped back to the green side, and you get to use them all over again. But in an emergency, you can do it. Just so you know, the only one I've seen in the core set that has the ability to use that scatter, which is cancel all attack dice, is the Howl Runner, who is the special TIE Fighter Squadron that comes for the Empire. The Rebels, of course, have Luke Skywalker, and he also has defense. None of the other TIE Fighters or X-Wings have defense at all, but Luke does, and so does Howl Runner. They have defense at the bottom. And they also each have a special ability, which is pretty nice. While attacking a ship, treat the defender as having no shields. That makes Luke's card awesome. There are damage cards. When you take a point of damage, you place a damage card in front of you. If you suffer a critical hit, doesn't matter how many critical hits you suffer during an attack, you're only going to take 1 card face up. And of course, it tells you, just like in X-Wing or the other games, it would tell you what the result of that critical hit was. And yes, you can be double damaged, which can be painful. The game lasts for 6 rounds. These are various obstacles out there. I like this version a lot. Now let's go back and talk more about what I think of Star Wars Armada.
In effect, what you are dealing with here is a zoomed-out version of X-Wing. We all know that if X-Wing were to scale, the capital ships would be enormous. In Star Wars Armada, you are at the fleet action level, and so the fighter squadrons are tiny in comparison to the ships themselves. Armada is actually quite different than X-Wing in many ways. To me, it has more in common with the naval miniature systems that I've been playing than the dogfighting represented in X-Wing. If you've ever played a good World War II naval miniature system, then you should feel quite at home with Armada, because it just feels more natural. It takes a moving ship time to execute a turn, and if you're not careful, it's fairly easy to plow into another ship, or off the board entirely. Note, if your ship leaves the board, it is destroyed. I'm sure that you've heard that you need to plan your commands in advance, and that might be intimidating to some. In reality, there are 4 commands to choose from, and you only need to plan in advance for the bigger ships. And even in that case, you can save the commands for later use if you do not want to use them immediately. Although, if you save them, they will have a lesser effect. You still have control of where you're going, and you still get to attack, regardless of what happens with the command dials. In many ways, Armada is an easier system to use than X-Wing. You can pre-measure anything at any time to check movement or range or whatever you need. The important thing to note is that the range ruler is double-sided. One side is used for weapons range and the other side is the one with the numbers on it, used to measure distance. It's mostly used for squadron movement. Pay attention to the keywords distance and range, as they mean 2 completely different things, and use the 2 different sides of the ruler. Ship movement is handled by the new maneuver tool, which is awesome. It handles both distance and direction, and takes the place of all those movement templates used in X-Wing and most other spaceship/naval combat games of the past. I'm not sure how long the clicking mechanism on the templates will hold up over time, but for now it's working great and I have no problem at all. Assembling the ships was fairly simple. The only problem I had was the squadrons. They're very tiny, and I had to take care to assemble them without damage. In fact, I did break one of the mounting trees that fit into the base of a rebel squadron, because it had some extra flash on it that I had to snip off. It doesn't sit there correctly now, and whenever I try to rotate the dials for damage, the whole thing falls off the stand. I'll probably just glue it together or contact Fantasy Flight Games' excellent customer service and get a replacement. Keep in mind, your squadrons of X-Wings and TIE fighters are not as important in Armada as they are in X-Wing. They're cannon fodder for the most part, used to distract your opponent from attacking your ships. But if you're using one of the special cards like Luke Skywalker or Howl Runner, then the squadrons can become more than a nuisance, and can become deadly. Another rule to keep in mind is that critical hit means nothing when a squadron is involved. They don't even count as a hit. There are exceptions, of course, as there always are, but these are listed on the specific cards themselves, so you don't need to go paging through the rulebook for them. As far as objectives, they can take some deciphering. With all of the first player and second player text, I would have preferred some bigger scenario cards that explain what the objective means rather than the 2-word description along with the setup instructions. Fantasy Flight Games is known for their flavor text, yet the objectives in Armada are missing that piece, and can be a little difficult to decipher too. But they are interesting, and I'm still working my way through them. When setting up a game, I like that if you use fewer points to build your fleet, you get to choose who goes first. Then the other player gets to select 3 possible objectives, and the first player has to choose from those. It makes for some strategic setup options, and also helps negate the advantage of getting the initiative for the entire game. This game comes with a hefty price tag, and that will prevent some people from buying into the game, which is a shame because it is a great game. But I can understand, because if the starter set is any indication, future expansions will also come with a hefty price tag. There's no way I would buy 2 starter sets because of the cost. So, with 1 starter set and no expansions, the replayability value is a bit limited. Using the same 3 ships all the time and only having 1 commander for each fleet that you must use can get a bit boring. I think the game will only really come into its own once there are more ship options available, which should be very soon. To summarize, I'm liking Star Wars Armada even more than X-Wing. It's a lot like a naval miniatures game, but simpler to learn, which I really love. The ships are spectacular, but be warned that getting deep into Armada might be getting a big dent into your pocketbook. The system is more relaxed than X-Wing, so you shouldn't get hung up on all of the details. You can pre-measure at any time, you can run into and even past other ships, and squadrons don't get in the way at all. You can just shoot and fly through them. If a mini gets moved, don't sweat it. Just guesstimate where it should be. A slight movement of a ship will not vastly affect the outcome of a battle. So relax and have a good time. Thank you for joining me in this review of Star Wars Armada from Fantasy Flight Games. Let me know if you found this review helpful by leaving a comment or sending me an email at elliot_miller@voiceofe.com. Make sure to subscribe to the Voice of E channel on YouTube, as I'll have a lot more thematic game reviews and board game giveaways. You won't want to miss any of them. Please tell your friends to check out the Voice of E, and hopefully they will subscribe too. Thanks again, and until next time, the Force will be with you. Always.
Get me that signal. We need more power.